Hello, and welcome to the Education Reformation, where it's our job to discover where education ought to go and how we might be able to get it there. Here we go. Welcome to the podcast. The official name for the podcast is the Education Reformation. And when I first came up with that, I was like, oh, that would be cool because it'll be like #ER or something like that. And then I actually searched the iTunes store for the ER, and it's like a billion different shows named the ER. So it's like, well, it looks like we're going long form with that name.
Right.
So, well, just to get started, why don't you tell me a little bit about where you're at right now, what you're doing, and as far as work and as far as a hobby and whatnot like that.
Sure. So I'm currently in Washington, D.C. I'm about a 10-minute walk away from the Capitol building, so it's a lot of fun. I originally moved to Washington, D.C. to focus on policy. I wanted to work on Capitol Hill, maybe in like the Senate or a subcommittee. I almost had a job actually with the Sea and Air Power subcommittee in the Senate, which would have been a lot of fun. I would have been, ordering battleships and different stuff like that. But I ended up taking a nonprofit job instead for an organization called the Education Network, which focuses on relief and development of poverty alleviation. It's like a coalition of, so when I was working at Accord, I'd been fostering a hobby in studying and investing in cryptocurrency. That loosely started for me back in late 2014, early 2015. Just kind of day trading. I lost some money just because I was a terrible day trader. And I sold out of almost everything that I owned at the time, except for this one currency called Decred, which frankly I forgot about. And then back in probably March of 2015, I happened to remember that I held some Decred, and I went and looked at my balance, and it was worth about $4,000.
Wow.
And that was just from an airdrop. So that really kind of got me excited about the space, and I thought I would try to reinvent myself as far as an investor to go from a day trader into like a Warren Buffett style value investor. And that was just a hobby for a long time. I wrote on Medium, just different articles about the way I invest. Started getting more popular, and then just a couple months back in September, I was approached. Let me back up even more than that. People started coming to me asking me to write about their companies and advertise them to my following, and thought, I'd make $50, $100 per article in Bitcoin, which is great because now it's a whole lot more than that.
Yeah.
But I would make money that way. And then an advisory firm in New York City started reading my work, and one of their managers reached out to me over LinkedIn, which is actually the first useful interaction I've ever had with LinkedIn. He reached out to me, asked for a phone call, and they offered me a full-time job. I turned them down, but I ended up negotiating a part-time position with them that's like on a contractual basis, and I'm getting paid just as much working for my part-time job as I am my full-time job. So my hobby turned into pretty lucrative side hustle, if you want to call it that. And one of these days I want to get full-time into crypto, but right now, I love my full-time job so much. It's pretty cool to be able to know that every day I go to work, I'm, working to reduce poverty and help the world's poor, and that's just something that's difficult to give up.
Can we recap what the Accord Network does one more time? Because I think it was cutting out earlier.
Sure. So the Accord Network is a group of about 95 organizations that focus specifically on poverty alleviation. We're a network that connects them together to be able to work in the field better. And then my specific job at Accord Network is to advocate on Capitol Hill for various issues that help them run as an organization better. So I get to work in the policy field that I originally wanted to, and then again work towards ending poverty. So it's an extremely fulfilling job. Not what I planned on getting into originally, but my hobby kind of worked its way into it's something I really enjoy, and now it's pretty explained to me in a full-time position.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely wish that I had been as lucky in accidentally ending up in something that I'm really passionate about. It felt like that was a very fortunate move. But I'm sure that you actually had a lot to do with setting that up and getting ready to roll with it.
Well, and it's funny because I do read a lot of different resources about building your tribe, marketing well, that sort of thing. But when I started out writing about crypto, I was doing it for myself. I just really enjoyed writing. I really enjoyed crypto, and so I was like, oh, I may as well write about it, and if someone reads about it, cool. My perspective was always, if I have one fan, then I'm doing something right, and so I'll write for that one fan, and if it goes cool, if not, that's fine. I enjoy what I'm doing, and here I am now, working part-time for an advisory fund in New York City.
Sounds like you've been reading some Tim Ferriss.
Yeah, actually, Ferriss. His podcast I listen to all the time, and then his book, Tools for Titans, actually, I've taken a lot of my investment practices from the wealth portion of Tools for Titans. So,
cool. Have you gotten Tribe of Mentors yet?
No, I haven't. It's on my list. I have to read right now. So.
Yeah, I have so much on my list, and I'm trying to do the podcast thing, and so reading has definitely fallen by the wayside.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's take a trip back in time and hear a little bit more about where you came from as far as education specifically, because you were homeschooled, right? Oh, wait. Before we get into that, I want to specify to those that are listening that Jonathan's actually my cousin.
Yeah.
So we grew up together. We knew each other. I knew his family for, since I was born. So just in case I seem super familiar with Jonathan. You go by John now, right?
Yeah. Families always call me Jonathan. When I moved to D.C., I would introduce myself and be like, oh, hey, I'm Jonathan. And they'd be like, oh, cool, John, it's nice to meet you. And so I got so fed up with it, I just switched it. There we go.
I give up.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I've known John for my whole life, all of his life.
Yeah, there you go.
So if I seem super familiar with John, that's why. Anyway, go ahead and tell us about how your education got started.
Sure. So it was pretty funny, actually. So I'm the firstborn in my family. My parents had me enrolled in a private Christian school not too far from my house. 2 weeks before start day, we had orientation and everything. We had met the teachers and the principal. My mom, who was public school growing up, and my dad was public school as well. My mom just kind of was like, you know what? I don't want to do this. I'm gonna put him in homeschool. I'm gonna teach him myself. And Mom, had an associate's degree in business. My dad has a bachelor's degree in aerospace dynamics, I think is where it is. He's an air traffic controller. So none of them had specific educational experience. But so my mom decided to homeschool in 2 weeks. She put together all the curriculum I needed for kindergarten, and we started homeschooling. And it was one of the best things to happen to me, to be honest. I homeschooled all the way from kindergarten all the way through my senior year of high school. And my mom did the same thing for all of my siblings, my 3 younger siblings. It was great. It was really cool because homeschooling really set me up to be a self-learner. By the time I got into high school, I was essentially teaching myself. Mom would give me my book, she would give me a planner, and then just say, you need to be at this point, for midterms, and then at this point for finals. And I got to control how I did my school. I woke up when I wanted to, I went to bed when I wanted to, and I got my school done in between. And in combination with things like Boy Scouts and band and speech and debate, it really prepared me to be able to think on my feet, to speak well, to write well, and be able to teach myself new material. So I was my own teacher for a lot of my life, and that's really set me up to be where I am now, both with my nonprofit job and with my crypto experience.
When would you say you started becoming a self-starter or having a little bit more initiative as far as innate motivation? Sure.
For me, and this may just be a first-born thing, I don't know. Maybe you can speak to that too, but when I was pretty young. I would say probably 10 or 11, to be honest, because that's around the time when I started Boy Scouts. And I remember meeting this guy. His name was Will Thomas. He was like a role model for me, and he was almost at an Eagle Scout. And I saw him, and I was like, you know what, I want to be like that one of these days. I want to be this confident, self-driven guy. And I was like 10 or 11, and so I joined the Cub Scouts. It was like the very last iteration of Cub Scouts. It's called Weeblo. And if you get the Arrow of Life in Weeblo Scouts, you can join Boy Scouts a year early. And my only purpose for doing that was so that I could become an Eagle Scout faster than anybody else. So, that really kicked off, I think, this driven part of me. And then I guess the self-learning part in homeschooling just kind of came around that time. I wasn't more independent until probably, 7th grade. But the driven part definitely was around that age, like 10.
Yeah, I mean, even 7th grade is pretty early to be a solid self-starter.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I didn't really think of it that way when I was a kid, though. It was just the way things were. So.
For sure. Do you think that your parents had a significant part in that, or is that just kind of an inherent, like your genetics kind of created that in you?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, my dad and his dad have always been, extreme self-starters. I mean, my grandpa on that side, when he was 12, his dad died, and he was the oldest in the family, and they ran a farm, and he was like the man of the house, and so that definitely runs in my family. So I think I got a good bit of that just from genetics, but, my parents always taught me from an early age that it's important to, work hard and learn hard and essentially make your own way. So it's a bit of both, I'd say.
Yeah. I'm hearing a couple things that I think are really important is that, number one, the purpose of schooling seems to actually be a very broad thing for you while you were growing up. It didn't just teach you how to read and write and what happened in history. You learned a lot of life skills and a lot of intrinsic skills or soft skills that would eventually help you down the road.
Right.
And also, you had an awesome set of parents that really gave a shit, right? Like, they didn't just not care, which is a problem that a lot of public school kids actually do deal with all the time.
Right.
And it's something that in the education system we try to cope with somehow, but it's kind of hard to get parents involved if they're awful parents to begin with.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there was a third thing that I'm drawing a blank on.
Yeah, for me especially, I think that's important to highlight is definitely the holistic experience. So, one of the big things that people ask a homeschooler is, well, heavens, how on earth are you going to be socialized? And I think that's one of the dumbest questions I've ever heard in my life because, when I was a kid, I was most likely doing more activities than anybody I knew. I mean, I was first chair trumpet in our symphonic band. I was first or second chair trumpet in our jazz band. I was doing speech classes, I was doing debate classes, and going to tournaments and stuff like that. I played basketball. I did fencing. Just all these insane things. Boy Scouts as well. I ended up being an Eagle Scout when I was 14. So, my parents not only just put me through school, like you said, to learn just practical skills like reading, writing, math, history, whatever, but I was exposed at a really early age to the concept of, respect and honor and hard work and thinking on your feet. I mean, speech and debate was probably one of the most formative things for me in my early life because I was put in a room, I was given a topic to speak about, and I had, 30 seconds to prepare a 2-minute speech, and that was normal for me as a kid. And so, now when I'm put in these scenarios, say when I go into the Senate, in the White House, and to the White House, and have to speak to high-level officials, it's not a big deal for me anymore because, I'm used to high-pressure scenarios where I have to think on my feet as well. And my education would not be the same if I was just a homeschooler just learning reading, writing, math, and history. I'm who I am because of all the extracurricular activities that went into my early education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think pretty much everybody's who they are because of their extracurriculars. I mean, if you look at me, I didn't have very many extracurriculars, but I'm amazing at video games.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's just game theory in general is something that I'm incredibly interested in, and I can sit down and talk about intelligently almost indefinitely. I mean, we can talk about video games for forever. So it seems like extracurriculars are another thing that was really important. And I think that was actually the third thing that I was going to say is those extracurriculars have such a huge influence on your education overall.
Right.
So, are you in Virginia planning on having kids one day?
Yeah, eventually. Who knows exactly when that's going to be, but one of these days.
Sure. Would you like to homeschool your kids if you ever have any?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's no question about that at all.
Right. What are some of the things that your parents did that you think you would change with your children in the future?
Well, to be honest, for my education, so I gotta say, my mom's teaching style has definitely changed over the years. And she's been teaching homeschooling for 25 years at least. Yeah, so as long as I've been alive. So it's evolved, and a part of that is when she first started, she was teaching just one kid, and then as the other kids came along, she was teaching at 1.4 kids at one time. So really, I would love to replicate my personal homeschool experience. I mean, there's very little that I would change in that because I think I had the ideal balance of mom would teach me things that I didn't know how to do, which included teaching myself how to teach me. I don't know that my siblings got as much of that, but I think that was probably the single most valuable thing that I learned as a kid. So really, I wouldn't change a ton as far as my experience in homeschooling.
Do you have plenty of friends that have been in public schools and whatnot?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. I was guessing you probably did, but every once in a while, you'll meet a homeschooler that pretty much only knows homeschoolers.
Right.
I didn't think that would be you.
Yeah.
So how much do you know about their education? Did they talk to you about that a good bit?
Every now and then we would talk about it. You're in the South, and so in Maryville, Tennessee, a lot of the education system was pretty dang crappy. I mean, Tennessee wasn't known when I was growing up for a good education system. So a lot of my friends that I hung out with, first of all, they were very smart kids. I mean, the people I interacted with in Boy Scouts and bands, et cetera, or sports, were usually, I would say not average, but they would describe the educational system as just being incredibly easy, pointless, really, you can skip most of it, especially since you were just essentially doing high school to be able to take the ACT, to be able to get into college. I mean, from what they described to me, it sounded like it was just a process to be able to get into college, to be able to get a job. So, but other than that, I don't know the specifics, really, of their public school experience.
Okay, cool. Well, that sounds like a pretty good understanding of the overall picture. What do you think is the difference between the purpose of your schooling as it would have been expressed by those administrating that versus the purpose of their schooling as the administrators and whatnot would express it?
That's a really good question. My schooling was essentially to prepare me for life. So I was learning skills. This is definitely, me reflecting back on this. I don't think I've ever asked this question. So I think my schooling was teaching me how to be able to deal with scenarios that adults deal with on everyday life. So learning new things, interacting with people, critical thinking, being able to speak and write. Those things were really important. And then from a general public school standpoint, I would say the goal of schooling is, we want informed citizens. We want all of our kids to be able to score X on the ACT so that they can get into their school of choice. And then the purpose of that is, obviously to get a job, to get into society well, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, I may be way off base on that, but that's kind of what I would say.
I don't think you're too far off base. So there's a couple different levels in the way that I'm starting to view education, right? So the purpose that you mentioned is typically the purpose that would be expressed by administrators or government officials, and they wouldn't say it in quite so many words. They wouldn't probably be as candid as we are about it because their jobs depends on them not being candid about that.
Right.
But the metrics that they use to show that they're doing a good job are how many of their students go to college, how many of their students graduate high school, how many of them are at a certain grade point average, and how many of them do certain school or perform at a certain level on standardized tests, right? Those are the metrics that they use to measure all of that. And it seems like at the lower levels you have teachers who are literally in the classroom going, I know that I need to teach this kid something. Like, I know that I need to impart knowledge, but as best as I can tell, the only way I can do that is by following the curriculum and just going down this same path that has been laid out for me. And so they end up actually using the same metrics as well, even though they know it's bullshit. Like, they know that that's not the best way to educate children on the most part as teachers, because they see the kids develop throughout their education, and they have to watch them. They're like extremely bored with school on a daily basis, and they know that what they're studying is incredibly interesting if they could just present it in a different way and not have to be as concerned about the standardized tests and the ACT, the SAT, and getting into college.
Sure.
Especially now, because getting into college is not as profitable emotionally or intellectually as it used to be. It used to be, you go to college and when you get out, you have job offers waiting on you. I got out of college and went and got a manufacturing job. So it's like completely different than it used to be, because this is my opinion. I think college has become high school, and high school has become middle school, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I would say that the master's degree is the new bachelor's degree. If you expect to have prestige in the space, you better have a master's degree, because otherwise, you're not going to get forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it sounds like we're pretty much on the same page there.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you could take that system, like the metrics that they use, with the standardized testing and the SAT, the ACT, etc., what would you change about that to make it closer to the holistic approach that you got to experience?
I don't know if this will work or not when we say that, because I'm not an educational, master here, but I was one of the kids actually that was at a disadvantage as far as standardized testing goes, because I have insane trouble with standardized testing. I can write you a paper, in lightning speed, and it's going to be great, but I'm terrible at standardized testing. So even as a homeschooler, there are state laws that say, if you want to get into college or if you want to graduate high school, you have to take all the same standardized tests that people in public school do. So I went through that same thing, and I did okay. At the ACT, I scored like anywhere from a 29 down to like a 25. It was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't like, I had friends, both homeschooled and public school, that would score, 32, 34. But I just could never break the 29 level. And I think that could be one of the first things to go. Because a lot of kids, all kids are different, and some kids, like me, struggle with standardized testing. Some kids are great at it and can't write papers. So, I don't know, I think we need a better model for evaluating skill sets than just this one test that covers reading, writing, and math. That'd definitely be my first step.
Okay. I'm just thinking about how that would work, because you said you're not like an education master or anything.
Yeah.
I'm not either. A lot of this podcast is actually me kind of educating myself, as you were speaking about earlier, in regards to cryptocurrencies and whatnot.
Right.
You started writing articles to kind of educate yourself on the topic, and that's really what I'm doing here. Eventually, I'd like to have some professors on and whatnot, but I think that starting at this level, this is the earliest stages of the scientific method, right? And that's really what I'm wanting to track. is the scientific method for education.
Right.
Eventually, we'll get to testing hypotheses and things like that, but the first step is just outright observation.
Right.
And because I only have my experience, right? I'm only a sample size of one, and I'm kind of a weird person, so I had an odd educational career, but as I'm listening to other people tell me more and more about their experiences, it's starting to become a really interesting situation, because that holistic approach that you're talking about, where, for instance, they teach you how to teach yourself, or they teach you how to learn, that's so much more effective than simply learning subject matter, right? Like, nobody cares about the dates involved in the American Indian War. I'm sorry, French and Indian War, too. Just coming up with my words here. I haven't smoked anything yet today, just to let you be aware. Maybe I shouldn't talk about stuff like that on the podcast. I don't know, but I don't really care a whole lot, I guess.
Who knows?
The Popo's listening. So yeah, I think that holistic thing is definitely a key point, and will definitely be sort of a motif in this podcast series. Okay, so if you had to cut out everything that you absolutely could, like every little detail, maybe I should rephrase this. If you could teach one class, if all of education, the only education that our students got was 1 year of a single class, do you know what that subject would be in your mind?
That's a good question. I would probably go for something like, I don't know, philosophy and learning, or something like that. Because I mean, from my perspective, if you can teach a person or a child how to learn, then they can go and pursue whatever it is that they're interested in and teach themselves effectively to the degree where they could get a job. I mean, that's kind of what I've done with cryptocurrency. I have no technical background, no educational background, but I know how to learn, and I know that I'm interested in that particular thing, and so I taught myself how to become an expert in that field, and it's paid off.
So sort of like a meta-learning type class, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's the answer that I always give too. But when you're talking about that, I was actually thinking with the meta-learning, it's almost important for students to learn the value of having that skill set.
Right.
Because you were able to, from what it sounds, you were able to actually see the worthwhileness of knowing how to educate yourself. You're like, okay, well, if I ever wonder about something, or I might be interested in something, I now, like, if I figured this out, then I can go pursue that, or whatever it is that I'd like.
Yeah.
Which is really the key to discovering your passion, discovering what you're interested in, what you're good at, and then eventually having a fulfilling, self-actualizing career.
Right, and I don't know that I would even say that I realized at an early age the value of being able to teach myself things. I think I didn't realize that until I got to college. Because I think we're all told in, lower grades, high school, that, college is hard, you have to prepare, you have to know all this stuff. And when I got to college, I was pleasantly surprised, because I thought that it was going to be much harder than it was. But I think that's because I knew how to teach myself things, and so if I didn't know how to deal with something in college, it wasn't difficult to adapt and figure out how to do it. So I over-prepared, whereas, you said earlier, high school is now the new middle school, college is high school. I think I had the opposite experience. I think I actually had a really good high school experience, like people used to have, and then I got to college, and it was like repeating high school all over again. So, yeah, I don't know that I necessarily realized it at a younger age, but when it came time to actually apply those skills, I had them, and I realized in retrospect how important it was.
So, I've got an interesting question. Is all of this is, we're talking about basically informal or self-directed learning for public school kids, right? They're going to have to pursue these types of things outside of the school system simply because of it's basically a matter of financing. You can't really fund all of these extra activities, at least not easily. And my question is, do you think that blockchain and cryptocurrencies, that new technology, could play a big part in evaluating or validating that informal learning?
So, just as a caveat, my answer to could blockchain improve X is always X.
Okay.
People believe that blockchain should be part of almost anything, depending on your angle.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to go back and repeat that. You're cutting out a little bit.
I'm one of the people who believe that blockchain should be applied well to almost any sector. It just depends on, the mind coming up with the idea and the angle they take on application. I really haven't thought about education and blockchain very much, but given the fact that blockchain is a digital immutable ledger, they can go back as far as you need it to and can store tons and tons of records. I don't think it would be terribly difficult to come up with some sort of database that tracks successful people and what they did to get to that point. And then it could be possible to compare what you've done in your life up to a certain point, and then compare that to a successful person that you want to emulate and see how the data points align. Mm-hmm. That could be an interesting way to track learning skills. Who knows though? I don't think anything like that exists currently, but it probably will one day soon.
I think it will one day soon. I'm actually very much looking forward to having the school system be significantly more of a distributed model, a little bit more decentralized, not to play to your cryptocurrency habits. But are there any other technologies that you see, looking back, that you might have enjoyed having in your schooling?
Oh yeah, for sure. Stuff like the free online resources for learning, like lynda.com, I think is one. Khan Academy is another. Just these giant databases of free classes that you can take on almost any subject. Yeah, I definitely wish that I had known about that when I was younger, because in any hobby that I would have gotten into, I could have taught myself better, or how to do whatever it was that I wanted to do. So when I was probably 12 or 13, I wanted to be a novelist. I wanted to write fiction specifically. And I finished the novel, and I've done, but I didn't know enough about the publishing process, the marketing and advertising process to really be successful. So I think if I had something like a Khan Academy back in the day, I would have been more successful. And I think that can tie into blockchain as well, as far as storage capabilities, or even allowing anybody to upload their own class to the blockchain that's available. Becoming a singular DTV is creating a decentralized entertainment, like Netflix essentially. But I don't think it's a very far step to go into, educational resources through video or whatever. So definitely, that'd be something I wish I had.
Yeah, I think the accreditation system is a little bit skewed still, because here's what I see, or what I would like to see happen. I would like for myself to be able to go to Udemy or Khan Academy or whatever website, and I'm even okay with paying for those resources. With Udemy, they run specials. If you catch it at the right time, you can get a full course for like $10. That would normally be like $120. So they run really significant specials on their material, but even $120 for a full course about video game development is, that's ultra cheap. So compared to, say, going to college, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So if there was a way to accredit those courses where I can now put that I have this degree from Udemy on my resume and that's considered to be legitimate, then we can start having people educate themselves much more rapidly and start moving that college being high school principle backwards to where eventually middle school will be high school and elementary school will be middle school, and maybe even one day we'll be teaching 6-year-olds high school material so that they can go on to become engineers and entrepreneurs or whoever and actually move our society forward.
Right.
Do you see any major holes in that?
No, actually, I've had the privilege of working with a couple of startup companies here in DC, and one of the projects that I worked on for a couple of months was actually an accreditation system using badges like on resumes. Essentially, we wanted to create a standardized badge system for exactly what you were describing, so that on a resume or on your LinkedIn profile, you could go and where you would see your bachelor's degree, there would be there's always a certificate or certification section, but actually giving that more heft and do exactly what you said. So no, I think that's probably the next step in educational evolution if we're actually going to move away from this standardized testing. What do we replace it with? I think that's the next step is practical classes that you can get certification in X amount of weeks that build up into whatever, a badge or a recognition of completion, so that you could go into a company and say, no, I don't have a bachelor's degree in this, but I have this certification. And you know what? It's probably going to be more valuable than a bachelor's degree because you don't have all those stupid core classes that you have to take. I was a politics student and had to take biology, and it was a giant waste of time and money on my part.
Yeah, I completely agree. I learned all of those classes in high school. Well, I don't understand why I had to take them again.
Yeah, exactly.
And pay for them.
Yep. Yeah.
So, is that company still active? Are they still?
The startup itself is. The project kind of stagnated just due to a lack of resources, but yeah.
Okay, so there's no point in me sharing their website or.
No. I actually moved away from the startup to focus more on my crypto brand. So.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we could. I don't have much traffic right now, but if I can send people traffic at all, I would definitely appreciate being able to do that.
Yeah.
So we're going up on an hour here, which is normally about how long I try to make my episodes. It's about an hour. I don't want to go too long and bore the crazy out of people. Do you have a current book list that is public?
That is a good question. Let me look. I had compiled an Amazon list of books that I like to gift. Let me see if that list is public.
I can say that actually Jon gifted me, or at least recommended that somebody else gifted me Deep Work by Cal Newport. That was a fantastic book, and it very much applies to the self-starter and going after what you want to learn about in your own time concept that we were talking about earlier. It's a fantastic book. It's well written and it's super easy to read. So I highly recommend people picking that up.
Yeah, so I definitely do have a public book list. I can get you the link to that if you want to include that.
That would be great. If you want to just send that to me, I'll include it in the show notes. And we'll wrap up with one last question. What's the one book that you think everybody should read off of that list?
Oh, that's awesome. I have such a hard time picking out of this list because it's just my all-time favorite. But if you really want to be able to turn into I'm going to cheat if I can and just say two.
Okay.
One, if you want to learn about health, wealth, and wisdom, I would go with Tim Ferriss's Tools of Titans. It's a monster book, but almost anything you want to know about life is going to be in that book. But I would definitely echo your plug for deep work if you want to know how to utilize your time well. So we didn't talk about this, but I do want to say the way that I've been able to be successful and have essentially two jobs is because I use my downtime for more than just relaxation and personal entertainment. Like, yes, absolutely, I play video games with my brother and we have a great time. But I also use my margin time, the time that I'm not at work, that I'm not doing other stuff. Instead of relaxing, I do research and, I write articles and I do investing. And if you want to be successful outside of your education, that's what you have to do too. You have to use your margin time effectively to be able to develop yourself into the person you want to become. And Deep Work by Cal Newport definitely helped me get to that area, to be able to focus in the limited amount of time that I had, to be able to do better research, do better investing, and eventually become the person that I am now with my two jobs at the same time. And I couldn't be happier. So I think Deep Work is probably one of the most influential books that I've read in the past 5 years.
Sweet. Well, I have to say, I think you're actually a pretty big inspiration to me, being like a younger cousin of mine. And then, did you just send me something?
I did, yes.
Okay, cool. It popped up on my computer. I was like, wait, what is that? Because I was going through on Skype earlier, like connecting with random Jonathan Creasy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, you're getting me excited. I'm going to have to go run.
Yeah, absolutely.
Playing the snow.
Always glad to help. And I'm really excited about what you're doing with this podcast. I think more people need to know about the current education system and then the vision of younger people like us for future generations education. Absolutely.
All right, man. Well, it was great talking to you. Thanks for coming on the podcast. If you're open to it, maybe we'll do a round two sometime. If I have an audience one day, you can just answer some of their questions and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk about pretty much anything.
Thanks, John. I'll talk to you later.
All right, bye.
So real quick, before you go, I'd like to say thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. If you'd like to hear more of our thoughts or debauchery, you can find us on YouTube and Patreon at The Drayler Show. That's DREYLOR. Or visit our humble WordPress blog by going to thedraylershow.wordpress.com. Those links will also be in the description below as well. Thanks so much.